Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. I'm just doing a quick podcast on the solar eclipse that's just happened. So I've just had some subsequent reflections and just a couple of things that I'd like to share that I'm hoping will be useful for you guys. And it sort of was inspired through, I did a live on Facebook last night, and there were a few people who joined, and it was quite a nice kind of exchange, between myself and some people that follow me on Facebook. And, a few really interesting questions came up. It was a general kind of overview of the current energies and how people were feeling relative to, the solar eclipse taking place and everything else that's going on, I suppose, particularly given that we are, at the last month of 2021. It's the last, eclipse of the year. The nodes are going to change from from Gemini, Sag, into Taurus and Scorpio. And so this chart is for today, actually. So you can see here the nodes are, 1 degree and 43 minutes. And of course, the nodes move backwards in the zodiac. So it's not going to be very long before they switch into Taurus and Scorpio. And I will actually come back and talk about the nodal shift in the Taurus Scorpio axis, because that deserves an entire session unto itself. But just a couple of things to kind of think about relative to closing the year with this solar eclipse, because what's going to happen is on the 19th of December, we're going to have a full moon in Gemini, right? So here comes up the Gemini Sagittarius axis again. It's not an eclipse, not a lunar eclipse, but it is a full moon, and it is in that axis. And so there's something significant about that for us, because as we know, full moons, always illuminate and highlight things for us, right? For better or for worse. So the thing to consider, I guess, as in closing this year, just relative to the nodes at least, there are obviously a number of other things going on collectively with, other cycles. And then, of course, just the actual cycles and transits and things that are happening in our own, birth chart. And so what I'm about to share can't be considered in just isolation. You kind of need to think about it in the backdrop of everything else that's going on in your life and in your chart. And so because I'm reading this as a general overview for everyone, then it obviously will be up to each of you to think about everything else that's going on and how you might actually integrate this information with other things that are going on as well, provided you know what's going on relative to transits, progressions, primary directions. It could be annual perfections you're looking at. There's so many things to look at, right? But the the shift that's actually happening is it's very meaningful, very, very meaningful. So the nodes started their journey in Sag and Gemini back in May of 2020, right? And so usually the nodal transits, last just over 18 months, right? And so we're just sort of, approaching the end of that cycle. And that's why we've got this last solar eclipse here with the new moon, sun, moon, and the nodes figuring there, because that's what eclipses are. They always involve the nodal axis. So those transiting nodes that you see here at 1 degree of Sag and Gemini, they'll obviously be transiting in 2 houses of your birth chart, right? And so that's obviously going to be different for each of us, depending on where Sagittarius and Gemini are located in your birth chart, right? So just a couple of things before. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through, I suppose, the essence of the eclipse again, just in a slightly different way. because I'm going to combine the nodes relative to them being in two houses in your birth chart, right? A pair of houses, which is how they would be placed. And so a couple of things to think about. It is a closing a pretty important cycle that's been going on for about 18 months or so. That's one level of it. It's the end of the year. It's a solar eclipse. Solar eclipses have quite a scorpionic type of signature and flavor to them, because they basically reveal what's hidden. They reveal what we're not attending to or paying attention to, or embracing or embodying, or acknowledging or understanding, or whatever it may be, right? But they essentially they bring things up. Like I said in my solar eclipse video, Rudolf Steiner has said that solar eclipses release all the energies from the earth herself. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that can come up, and obviously that's going to be depicted from the Sagittarius Gemini signatures, the energies of those two archetypes. And in addition to that, whatever houses they are occupying in your own birth chart. So there's two things to consider there so far. And the third thing to consider, and it's not in any particular order, the third thing you need to consider is, well, do you have any planets in the houses that have been and are still being occupied by these transiting nodes? Because if you have planets in these houses, they might be, or they would have at some point been hit off by these transiting nodes as well. And that's pretty important relative to this 18-month cycle, right? So there's three things to look at: the nodes themselves relative to the signs they are occupying, which is Sagittarius and Gemini, the houses that they are occupying as they have been transiting there for the last 18 months, and do you have any planets in either of those houses, or both of those houses? So that's three layers to consider. One other thing to consider is, as I said, because this is a closing, finishing, completion cycle, it is also a preparation, if you like, for what we are getting ready to step into relative to the nodes shifting into Taurus and Scorpio. And so think about it like this: we're just finishing and leaving behind an 18-month period of having needed to discern truth, right? To learn, to inquire, to investigate, to question everything. That's Gemini. The Sagittarius part is what gives us the ability to understand the purpose of any data or information we come across, and whether indeed it actually even has a purpose, or actually has any meaning, or actually has any truth. And so, in short, we've been on this journey of discovering truth in amongst the backdrop of this crazy story and narrative that's been playing out, for the last 2 years. And we are all very aware that the narrative has changed virtually every day in terms of, different bits and pieces of information being withdrawn, corrected, just changed altogether, chopped and changed, whatever it may be, right? So that's obviously been going on a lot. We are aware of that as well. And, a big part of that is because these transiting nodes were actually squaring Neptune, which is just over here at 20 degrees of Pisces at the moment. But, earlier when the nodes were, 18, 17, 18, 19, whatever it may have been, I can't quite remember, but it was around about that number, they were squaring Neptune. So this nodal axis of Gemini's Sag has weaved through the Neptune filter, which at the personality level has been incredible deception through organizations, establishments, certain entities, whatever it is, media. Oh, media have got a lot to answer for, consensus reality media. They've got a lot to answer for. Frankly, sometimes I wonder how those guys sleep at night. I'm not saying every single person in mainstream media is necessarily like that, but generally, yes, they are, because that they just kind of, once you take that path of consensus reality media, you're very limited relative to communicating the truth. The truth gets distorted and doesn't even get a voice or a platform. If it wasn't for alternate media, we'd be screwed. We wouldn't actually know what the hell's really going on. So the trouble is that we've got so much information, and it's just very, very challenging to discern, what's real, what's not, what's truth, what's lies. And that's been one of the biggest tests for all of us, with these transiting nodes in Sagittarius and Gemini. And it's divided people, it's united people, it's created a lot of significant conditions and situations on the earth plane, in people's personal lives, professional lives, in our relationships, in our friendships, etc., etc. So it's been quite a challenging. See, I mean, by the very nature of Gemini and Sagittarius, they're not. I would not consider those archetypes to be a pair that's actually a really challenging pair of archetypes. If you want challenging archetypes, go to, the Virgo Pisces axis, or the Taurus Scorpio axis, or the Capricorn Cancer axis. Those polarities are a lot more difficult. Sag Gemini is really about truth, wisdom, truth, information, knowledge, expansion of consciousness, intuition. They're not a difficult pair, but in the backdrop of what's been going on, squaring Neptune, it has been extremely difficult. It's been absolute madness and chaos, as a matter of fact, relative to, people trying to figure out what to believe, right? It's just been chaos. But I think, as we've come full circle with this particular cycle, we've learnt a lot along the way. We've had to perhaps develop a different perspective on things, a different attitude, a different mental attitude. We've had to sort through a lot of information. We've had to try and work things out. We've probably changed our mind on things several times. We've all had, lots of different experiences, but around those kinds of themes. So in short, the journey of the nodes, whatever houses they have been in, it has been the quest for truth. And that quest for truth is underpinned by the narrative of reality as it's been presented the last 2 years. So there's that level, and then there's an even more personalized level relative to, the houses that they are moving in and out of for you. So let's just quickly go through the houses. I was only going to, just do a short podcast here, so I'll do that and then I'll just finish up. But before I do, just a couple of things I'd like to read. So eclipses emphasize the review process that must take place in our lives. The book I'm reading, because some of you will ask, Robert Kulczynski, Interpreting the Eclipses, for those of you that are interested. It's a very small book, but it's quite good. So I'll just start that again. Eclipses emphasize the review process that must take place in our lives. Whether you like it or not, eclipses test you out on how well you are doing with respect to each houses in your horoscope, in your birth chart, in other words. They force you to review matters in terms of the house in which the solar eclipse has fallen. They give you an opportunity to set your house in order and get your act together in terms of this particular area of life. The spotlight is thrown upon this house during the period of the effect of the eclipse, and all of those things in this house that have been neglected or hidden come in for a good house cleaning. Eclipses are scorpionic in effect. They force you to separate what is of value from the junk, and then force you to unload the junk. They are pur- purgative in their effect upon your life. I'm not sure if I pronounced that word correctly. If you have a clean house, the effect of the eclipse is less traumatic. Traumatic is a pretty, loaded word. I kind of like to be a bit careful when I use that word because it can just trigger things in people. I think it'd probably be fair to say that not everyone's going to experience trauma when a solar eclipse comes. It's just not going to happen, right? But in some instances, for some people, that might, yes, it might be an experience. Okay, so those were just a couple of general sort of comments that I wanted to read. And so let's start with Aries, of course, the first house and seventh house, Aries, Libra. Now, whether you've got Aries on the ascendant or not doesn't really matter. I'm not referring to your ascendant sign. I'm referring to the houses in terms of the houses being in the natural order of the zodiac as they are reflected through that, which is the first house is always Aries, the seventh house is always the Libran house, regardless of what signs you have located at those house cusps, right? And naturally, that's going to depend on your accurate time of birth, which a lot of people don't have an accurate time of birth, but that's another point. And, just by the way, just another reminder for those of you that don't have a rectified time, just reach out to me because that is a service that I offer. So, if you are in doubt, maybe your time of birth is wrong by 15 minutes, maybe it's wrong by an hour. I don't know, but whatever it is, if you're interested in having it rectified, just reach out. Okay, so the nodes are traveling through house 1 to 7, and where you're at right now with from the point of view of completing and finishing what's been happening in these two houses. Okay, so first, seventh house, I'm going to only just give a few key words, right? I'm not going to go into some in-depth analysis of each pair of houses. I'm just going to give a few key words just to kind of refresh our mind and remind us perhaps what to consider, because the eclipse only occurred yesterday, right? And so we're still well and truly in the energy of the eclipse, and will be for some time, as a matter of fact, because eclipses last for quite a few months, right? But, obviously at this point, we're at a very potent point with the frequency of the eclipses, and the new moon is there at the moment and will be there till tomorrow as well. So, there's time to really meditate on the information I'm giving you and really just kind of reflect, and maybe it inspires you to think of something that you hadn't. So the first and seventh houses, if you've got the nodes running through there, which in this particular chart, it just happens to be that, because the chart that I drew as an example here is for 5:52 this afternoon in Melbourne, Australia. So at that time, Taurus was on the ascendant, and the nodes are obviously in the first and seventh houses. So that's just got to do purely and simply with your relationships, yourself, how you experience yourself in relationships, how you step into relationships. And this is not just personal relationships, this is all partnerships, right? Whether, personal or professional. First and seventh house covers all of those types of relationships and partnerships. So the first house is what enables us to establish our own identity, right? And the seventh house kind of gives us back that validation. When we step into the seventh house, we're kind of looking for that validation of our own identity, who we are, what sort of identity do we have, or have we established, and so the seventh house is always a mirror, right? But essentially the nodes having been in 1 and 7, that there's probably been a lot of learning and growing and developing and Um, Figuring out what's true for you about yourself and about partners and about relationships. That's been the journey, right? And the second and eighth house, it's got to do with property and sex, right? um, Much more than that as well. So the second house has been a quest for figuring out the truth around, your relationship to possessions and to sex, basically. Your relationship to money, your relationship to how you exchange, in the world of money and sex, for that matter, as well, because both are used as a form of exchange in some kind of way, right? There's an exchange that goes on when we give money to somebody or when we give ourselves sexually to somebody, right? There's an exchange that occurs. So I think, it would be fair to say that there has been a quest of learning and discovering more about your own values, second house, your own possessions and resources, and how you share yourself with other people, how willing you are to share all of that and share yourself with others. There's been a lot of material that's probably come up for you from the point of view of trying to figure out what feels truthful for you, in that sort of exchange. Is how real is it? How truthful have you been about that kind of exchange in those sorts of situations? Third and ninth, it's a double signature, really, because it's Sag and Gemini, right? So there's not too much to say about that other than the third and ninth houses really correspond to knowledge, learning, studying, higher learning, teaching, mentoring, traveling, religion, esoteric, metaphysical studies. I guess perhaps some of the things that maybe have come up is, is my thinking sort of, have I been limited in my own thinking? Have I just sort of stayed at a Gemini axis sort of level? Have I integrated the Sagittarius component, which gives me that greater expansive view of true wisdom and truth? The Gemini is going to get you there from the point of view, it's going to help you inquire and ask questions about what you were trying to learn and understand. But Sagittarius is going to give you the bigger picture and the meaning, right? So it's a double signature. Fourth and 10th has essentially got to do with security, right? Second house and just jumping back, second and eighth has to do with security as well, but it's a different level of security in second and eighth because it's primarily got to do with possessions, survival, Taurus. How secure do I feel, in the tangible world? Whereas the security relative to fourth and 10th houses has got to do with an inner security, fourth house, inner soul, foundation, roots, home life, and external security, 10th house, right? Professional identity, public self. It is about security, though. Do I feel secure in my external identity and in my inner private world, right? So these are the questions that have come up, the seeking and the seeking of answers around, where do I belong? Where is my tribe? Fourth house. Where do I belong in society? 10th house, given especially at the backdrop of, the current narrative that's been going. There's much more to each house. I'm just giving a few key points, right? Our 5th and 11th house is really a pretty easy access because it's got to do with, 5th house has got to do with love, pursuit of happiness, children, playfulness, creativity, receiving love, also giving love, enjoyment, happiness, things like that. Being able to basically just express yourself, right? Express the creation that you are, right? Having that confidence, that Leo sort of confidence and courage to rightly be who you are and shine in your light, right? And the 11th house corresponds to, your tribal group communities and also place in society as well. And, perhaps things that you've been very passionate about, even in the movement of, freedom, for instance, pro-choice, things like that, supporting different movements of that nature, supporting the revolutions that are going on, things like that. And obviously, having a healthy balance between not over identifying with the group and just losing your own identity, and not being totally self-absorbed in your own identity, fifth house, and not giving a shit about the rest of the world kind of thing, right? And so the seeking with the nodes through those houses is around those kinds of issues. It's a seeking through, where's my tribe? Where's my community? Where do I belong on that level? How authentic am I being with my own sense of identity and who I actually am? Am I being real? Am I walking my walk, with what I've chosen to engage in or believe in or walk with or stand with, those sorts of things, right? 6th and 12th house, very complex houses. Really hard to kind of narrow this one down, but service. Both houses have to do with service, just in quite different ways, because the 6th house is the service that you would do on the physical, material level. It's the house of Dharma, and the 12th house is the house of Karma. So it's a quest and a seeking. It has been a quest and a seeking, questioning around how am I being true with my own Dharma? How am I serving? How, what is meaningful for me around those sorts of elements in my life? Lots of seeking in the divine, 12th house, divine source creation to all things, 12th house, Pisces, Neptune. How do I surrender into truth? 12th house is surrender. Gemini, Sagittarius axis is seeking truth, seeking answers. And so, yes, the seeking and the journey has been around how do I surrender into a truth and trust that is the right one for me, that is the right journey for me, that is the right truth for me. That's kind of been the seeking, if you like. And also, how do I give back? How do I, through some sense of service, how do I offer something truthful? It's also, I mean, the 6th house is also, it's so many layers. It's got to do with health. It's got to do with work. It's got to do with self-improvement, your daily kind of routines and tasks. So, there's, as I said, there are quite a few layers to the 12 houses, right? Which are the Earth's houses, by the way. And, one day what I might do is, I've kind of touched on this briefly, I think a couple of years ago, but I haven't gone right through it. Maybe one day I will. In medieval astrology, the houses have all these other different meanings and layers to them, not contradicting the meaning that we understand with the traditional kind of view of houses, not contradicting that at all, and certainly not suggesting that the medieval is more powerful than the traditional way that we normally look at the meaning of the houses or anything like that. It's just a complementary additional level of information that's actually very, very useful. I've worked a lot with medieval astrology, particularly in the past. I used to work with it quite a lot many years ago. I still work with it occasionally, not as often because I'm just more into evolutionary astrology and esoteric, but medieval is very powerful, especially with the meaning of the houses. There's some material there that you'll get that you just won't see in any other books. So perhaps I'll come back and talk about that one day. Okay, so in summary, and just to close up, just have a think about the transiting nodes for the last 18 months through a pair of houses. This is what's this is what's been important for you, and you're basically at the end of that now. And so now's really the time with this solar eclipse energy to really, really, really trust your heart. And it's you've got to discern through the bullshit in your own life, in your own mind, in the world, everywhere. You've got to discern through that and listen to the heart, the soul of the heart and the soul, right? Because this is a quest for truth. And truth shines like the stars, the billions of stars in the sky. Truth is so powerful, and it's there inside you. It's really just about opening your heart to that. And this solar eclipse is perfect time to be doing that. So we've got to let go of ego and pride, self-righteousness, all that sort of bullshit, right? Because we're not all always right all the time. We make mistakes. And maybe that's been part of our learning and growth the last 18 months as well. And we've had to kind of, take a step back and acknowledge that, hey, I made an error in what I said about this, that, and that, or what I was thinking about that, or what I adopted as being 100% truth. And I was trying to shove that down your throat as it being the truth when in fact it wasn't. And, through my own sort of fears and stuff, I've been too scared to to be honest and upfront about that, because I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I fell into some bullshit, narrative and story, or, what I'm just giving, sort of general examples, right? Communication, we've had to learn how to communicate truth to ourselves and to those around us as well. The Gemini is the communicative factor, and the Sagittarian is the component that brings in truth, wisdom, intuition, the all expansive perspective, inner standing and understanding. So I'll leave it there and let you guys reflect on that. Let me know what your thoughts are. I hope you are all doing really well. I need to figure out I know how to do a live on YouTube from the point of view of, just click a button and you go live. But the lighting and the sound and everything just was all wrong once when I tried it. I just need to figure out, I might need to download some software that kind of helps me make it all look, sort of good enough for people to see me properly and to hear me properly as well. That's pretty important. All right, guys, sending you much love. And by the way, just finally, I just want to leave with this. When I mentioned about my mum's situation in Greece, I had a couple of people reach out to me to offer support and to even offer financial help. And I was just blown away. There's two people that have already donated some money actually for me to give to my mum. Both of you know who you are. I'm not going to say your names. I just would rather keep that, be respectful about confidentiality. But I wanted to give a shout out to both of you. I am so grateful, and I'm more grateful just merely because of the gesture. It's not even about the money. I mean, the money is, money is money, comes and goes, all of that. But the fact that, you guys just had that in your heart to be, generous at a pretty difficult time, it means so much to me and to my mum. She was crying, even I was crying. So yeah, big love to you, to both of you. You know who you are. And there is another person that emailed me and offered help in a different way, and you know who you are as well, just with information and things like that. So thank you to you. All right, guys, I will see you very soon. Got a show coming up with Ariel Gutman just like in 2 days' time. That's going to be fantastic because we are going to go very, 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 very deep into the absolute beautiful goddess of love, Venus. So I will see you guys, and it will be a video recording. Okay, much love. Bye.